Welcome into KSL Sports Rewind. Dusty Lister and Dane Stewart, as always, presented by Heidemann and Associates.
Yeah, that's right. Just a reminder, if you have any legal needs, the experts at Heidemann and Associates can take care of you, be it business, personal, maybe you want to get things set up for posterity's sake. Whatever it is, it's a full-service law firm. To learn more about how they can help you, you can visit utah.law, or if you're interested in a free consultation, just tell them that Rewind sent you when you call 801-754-4240.
Absolutely not. And as always, we're also brought to you by Western Governors University. We've talked about make 2022 the year of you, get your 4-year degree at your own time and your own pace. And now, one thing we want to get to the next step, and that is a 1-year MBA. So if you're really looking for that next big piece, so you've been thinking, well, maybe business school, don't know how to make it work. Western Governors University allows you to get it done in a year. And again, at your own time, your own pace. And all that, you're not going to break the bank, go into deep amounts of debt to get it done. To learn more, go to wgu.edu to find out more from Western Governors University. And so excited to have them on, because now we get to, well, I don't want to say what we're all waiting for, because I love the playoff season and I hate it at the same time, because it means football season is coming to a close. But Dane, it's hard to think that it was just, I mean, I guess for us, 11 weeks ago that we did our first football videos.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast it goes by, huh? I mean, it feels like you just kind of get started, and then you start to kind of get a feel for teams and how they're going to try to attack and strengths. And then next thing you know, you're midway through region play. And I mean, the region races are, shaping up, and some are already kind of decided. I mean, it just flies by. But now, look, you can make the argument, and I know some coaches probably won't love this, but you can make the argument, hey, this is when it counts. It always counts. Right. But with the majority of teams making the state playoffs in most classifications, look, it's winning in, right? It doesn't matter what your seed line is, whether you're the 1 seed or a 22 seed, win and keep on going. And we've seen big runs in the past, and we'll see, Dusty, if we have any maybe, I'm not going to say unheralded, but maybe underseeded teams that are cropping up in this year's brackets.
Well, let's start there, because we're going to go through kind of lay of the land here. We're going to go through each classification, 6A, 5A, 4A. We'll talk about some of the interesting things within the best of the rest, 3A, 2A, 1A. And let's start first with 6A. And RPI rankings conversation is brought to you by Heidemann and Associates. Go to utah.law to find the law office nearest you. And if you can't get into an office, Justin will also do a FaceTime consultation with you as well. And starting with 6A, when we look at the final RPI, this is what, it feels like year 10, but I know it's like maybe like year 3 of the RPI.
I think it's 3.
Yeah. Any surprises to you as you're looking at the 6A RPI?
Yeah, there's a couple. And look, if teams want bulletin board material, here's the opportunity. Let's start, Dusty, with the 5 and 6 line. How about Farmington coming in number 5, Syracuse at number 6? We've talked about these two programs. I think we both thought they were the two best programs in Region 1 this year. And in Week 10, these two teams met, and it was all Syracuse in that contest. I think the final was, 40-20. They jumped on them 21-0 out of the gate. Hamblin had another pick 6. If you're playing Syracuse, guys, don't throw to Brevin Hamblin. That's the magic recipe there. But Farmington coming ahead of Syracuse in the final RPI surprised me a little bit. It felt like, ever since they kind of, hit some injuries, maybe kind of leaned one direction given the strengths of that roster, and just hasn't felt like it's gelled like it did early in the year for the Phoenix. And meanwhile, it feels like Syracuse, man, they are trending up, huh? I mean, it almost feels like the Phillies in baseball to leverage MLB. It's baseball season, but man, a team that, we had high expectations of, came out of the chute, maybe I don't want to say tentative, but just didn't look like we had expected. Next thing you know, bam, here come the Titans. And so that one surprised me. I'll tell you another one. I think the West Panthers coming in as a 9 seed. They're behind Davis. Yeah. They're behind West Jordan. This is a team, I've seen them go toe-to-toe with top 5 teams in 6A. I think the West Panthers are a team here, probably underseeded, and one that I think you should be keep an eye on.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it's where things move. If you look where Davis moved, right, just Region 1, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Where they came from and where they finished is far different. Because you look how Davis started here. Remember, lost opening game against Lehigh, lost at West Jordan. They end up ahead of West Jordan as the final ranking kind of comes together. But a lot of that is that they just started playing better football. But for West, it's just really, it's your opponent's winning percentage that really got to that region stuff really really kind of hurt the West Panthers. And on that, you don't get the full bang for your buck when you go play Mater Dei. But can I make a fun statement about what that means for West?
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. The more football that West plays, I think is better. I know they're going to say injury. If someone can say injuries or anything else, like I think them getting a good rhythm with games mattering is a good thing to this club that could be a fly in the ointment when we talk about the top 4 teams in the state.
I wouldn't disagree with you on that with one caveat. Being the 9 seed, place them in the bracket with Corner Canyon. So, I think when you look at how the bracket shapes out, you want to avoid a Corner Canyon. You want to avoid a Skyridge as long as you can. And coming in at a 9, it's like, well, you're going to have to go through them to get to Rice Eccles. And this is a program that's ready to take that next step in terms of Rice Eccles. But man, that's not going to be easy having to go through the top-seeded Corner Canyon Chargers. Well,
that's true. And I guess part of it is that the different line where it would take you, right? Because if you don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you're talking about the number 1 seeds at each side of the bracket. Corner Canyon number 1, Skyridge number 2, Beam number 3, and AF number 4. Yeah, so basically where it goes. The other one, just for fun, is talk about Lone Peak goes. They were in the top 5 a couple of weeks ago. Now they sit at number 11, and we'll see what that means for the reigning 6A champion.
Another one, Dusty, that you could bring up is PG, right? They came on the scene really hot. Nick Staffieri and company, of course, he hits the injury. But I think when they were playing Lone Peak, these were 2 teams in the top 5 of the RPI.
Right.
And then to see them, they settle around 14, well, at 14 after the season's said and done. That's one that's a scary group. If they're healthy, we've seen them put up a lot of points against a lot of good teams. That's another team to keep an eye on, but one that I think we kind of saw settle a little bit as they got deeper into region play and having to go through 3 of the top teams in the state.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you have to go through them in consecutive weeks either. So we'll see where PG goes. So let's take a look at the bracket. So we're going to start in the top left. If you're looking at the bracket on uhsaa.org, top left, let's look at this week. Interesting matchup, I think, from the very top. Layton and Harriman. I mean, if you're thinking of this as being like Dayton, Ohio, in the 12, in the play-in games, whatever, this is that game you look at it and say, these are 2 teams that would love probably to be on a different line, but this is the line they're on, because this is an intriguing 6A matchup.
It is. This is a Layton group that, Dusty, they've won some big games in recent years, and this is a Harriman team that I don't know what to think about Harriman. Been a tough year for the Mustangs, but man, they come on week 10 and they take care of Mountain Ridge. And the statement that we had coming into this was, look, it doesn't matter what's happened in the regular season. It's about winning week to week. And I kind of feel like, man, is Harriman coming in with a little bit of momentum here? It feels like the back half of region play, things got settled a little bit for the Mustangs, kind of, learned who they were. And it's not the first time that we've seen this group get tough non-region losses and then kind of figure it out in region and put together playoff runs. This is a scary game, I think, for the Layton Lancers. I think that Harriman team has probably got upset on their mind.
Now, you win and you get Corner Canyon. That's the caveat. You win and you get the Corner Canyon Chargers, who Corner Canyon's already played Harriman. Then week 2 will be a little different. But then we go to the next one. And this is one of those games we talked about earlier. Now, it's a region rematch, West and Hunter. And for the West Panthers, to me, Dane, it's another game to continue to figure out the identity of this team and get better as they'll take on the Hunter Wolverines.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the familiarity of having to play Hunter maybe helps and hurts a little bit, right? Hunter obviously going to have that one circled and ready to go. It's a region rivalry. It's a game that brings a lot of passion on the field. I'm sure that West would, I think they would have loved to have had a first-round bye. I also think that, the familiarity of a region opponent, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. We've seen crazy things, and you talk about 20 seeds. Look, I wouldn't pick Hunter in an upset here, but you talk about a team that already played West once this year. Hard to beat a good team twice. This is not going to be an easy game for the West Panthers. Wouldn't be shocked if this one is closer than the first matchup, but I do think this is West, and it gives them that ability, to your point, Dusty, to keep things rolling, keep that rhythm and that momentum that they've built up over the course of the regular season.
Yeah, and I only bring that up because I remember watching those Peyton Manning Colts teams, and anytime they had a bye, it was a flip of the coin of what was going to happen every year, right? That's why I love the idea of them moving on. West, they play into West Jordan. So West Jordan gets a bye. Congratulations to the Jags, by the way.
No kidding, huh?
Go earn a young team. They got some stuff going on at the end of the season, but we talked about hits and misses, and we talked about West Jordan being a miss. man, they get a bye, Dane. That is a great achievement for this program.
It was a big miss by us, Dusty. Did not see this coming from West Jordan at all. You talk about the way that the season kind of, concluded. Look, they finished third in that region. And, I mean, there were people, including myself, who thought Mountain Ridge was going to win that region. They finished ahead of them. I think technically tied with them in terms of record. But that being said, I mean, great year for West Jordan. Really saw them burst onto the scene. Had that great start early. You talking about some things they had to figure out late. But you tell me the last time that West Jordan had a bye. Now, I know, in old tournaments, they didn't have first-round byes. I get it. But, man, what an accomplishment to be a top 8 seed in 6A. Tip of the cap to the Jags.
Yeah, last time West Jordan made it to the semifinals. So I guess we'll use that as the byline, right? 2005 when Mike Mayfu was a fullback for the Jags. Our first state tournament, the Jags were in the semifinals last time. So we'll see how they go. Again, they play in the Corner Canyon. It would be in the quarterfinals, the winners of that end of the bracket. All right, and we go to the bottom left. American Fork gets the bye, and the Cavemen, maybe this bye comes right. Aaron Beam, they've got to figure things out. They go 1-4 in the region, get that win against Westlake, but they found tough sledding like they found in years past, and maybe it's a good thing to kind of get things figured out, Champion Edwards and crew, to make a run into the state tournament.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, they faced off against Skyridge in Week 10. I was at that game. They had never defeated Skyridge in program history. It was only the fourth matchup between the pair, but Skyridge ends up pitching the shutout. Now, that being said, it's probably, it is the best defense in 6A, and it's probably the best defense in the state. This Skyridge D is tough to move the ball against. Dusty, they only gave up 84 points on the season. They gave up 53 in 2 weeks. So do the math, right? The other 8 games, they only gave up 30 points. It's just unreal. And it's the first time American Fork has been shut out, going all the way back to when they played Bingham in 2012. So it's been a long time since the offense has had that kind of a tough night. And to your point, you get 2 weeks. There's a lot of time there. Settle the troops, kind of get reoriented, get back to what you know, get back in your rhythm. Because, look, they could have a really interesting second-round matchup depending on how the other game plays out.
Well, yeah, so very interesting. All right, so this matchup, they'll be playing to Mountain Ridge and Westlake, which is a rematch of one of the most epic games that the state saw this year. This was a overtime thriller, double overtime thriller, if I remember right. But the end of that game was just absolutely insane. Westlake getting the win in that one.
Yeah, remember they broke the internet. Someone needs to reach out to Al Gore, let him know we need a little more server space there, right? We need a little more bandwidth on the World Wide Web. Anyway, man, what a heck of a battle. Westlake came out with the win in that one. 43-42, I think it was, something like that. It was a 1-point victory, double OT. Look, and man, what a shot in the arm for Westlake. Every year we talk about how difficult it is in that region, but that really showed, again, hey, look, tough in Region 4, but they can compete with some of these other teams in the state. And the fact they get that rematch now, I think the Sentinels are going to come out a little angry in this one. Yeah. But, man, what a heck of a rematch we get here in the first round of the playoffs between two programs that had an absolute classic in the regular season.
Yeah, both trying to bounce back from a frustrating end of the season as well. Yeah. And then another region rematch. This is the thing about the RPI. The rematches in Game 2s are just really interesting. Granted, Mountain Ridge and Westlake are not region foes, but this one is. Roy and Weber. We saw this work out a couple of years ago. Remember, Roy was playing extremely good football, thought they'd be a scary team, and Weber took care of him. So this is a rematch. This one's going to be played at Roy.
Yeah, that one a couple of years ago, it was some of the first turnovers of the season for Roy. I think the first lost fumble of the season occurred in that game, if I recall correctly. This was a Weber team with Aiden Carter. Felt like, look, they had some pieces there. They graduated so much talent off of last year's group that made it to the semifinal. Just felt like it was just never able to really quite gel. But they get an opportunity to go up against a former region rival. Of course, right. Roy now being in Region 2, Weber in Region 1. But man, a lot of familiarity here. Going to be played at Roy. We talk about a team missing. Roy missed on Roy, and a fantastic year for the Royals. Man, heck of a job getting a 12 seed, getting a home game. I think this is going to be a really competitive ball game. I know Weber's had some tough ones this season, but man, it feels like they're so well coached. They're always ready for big games, big moments over the last couple of years. I think this is going to be a really tight contest.
Yeah, and I did misspeak. I mean, who would have think that a team that shares a boundary with someone isn't in the same region? But
yeah, right.
That's here we are. And then they play into Farmington. And for the Farmington Phoenix, this is not last season going into the state tournament with a ton of momentum. We talk about that loss to Syracuse, who lose Boston Reinhold. Though they lost him last year, they lost him early. They were able to find out who they were throughout the year. Now they're really trying to figure that out once again with a total different group of guys. But Dan Coates is a very good coach and can figure this thing out.
Yeah, the turnover bug has been them a little bit. But to that point, look, they're still 8-2 overall on the course of the regular season. Had a phenomenal year, the Phoenix did. It's going to be a tough out in the playoffs. And, whether it's Roy or Weber, going to be a heck of battles, regardless of who the opponent is for the Phoenix. But again, they get a bye. They get an opportunity to maybe work on a couple items, see if they can get back to some of that more consistent ground game that we saw from them early on. It's hard to replace a guy like Boston Reinhold, but they're going to have a little bit of extra time to try to figure out how they get back to that balance that we saw from them early in the year.
Yeah, so now we go to the bottom right of that 6A bracket. Syracuse, this was a team we talked about at the beginning of the year, and you said at the top, and we went through the RPI, and we don't spend a ton of time here with Syracuse because we did so much earlier. Man, they ride it. Because remember at the beginning of the year, we kept saying on the show, like, maybe this Knights team or Titans team, the antithesis of last year where they got up such a fast start and kind of fell back. This year, it was a slower start, and man, they're playing their best football.
Yeah, they are. And look, I really feel like that defense has really anchored it. Obviously, the offense has come to play. Metcalf has really settled in. We saw him really burst on the scene last year. So many options in that offense to get the ball out to. It is really difficult to defend. Hopkins and company, man, they just do such a good job. For me, it's a scary team, Dusty. I mean, you talk about the momentum they come in with. They come in with a lot of momentum. Of course, probably nothing bigger than the doubling up of Farmington for that Region 1 title. They're playing confident. They're putting a lot of points on the board, and, man, their defense is flying around right now. It's a scary bunch for Coach Michael Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they'll be playing for the winner or waiting on the winner of Lone Peak and Copper Hills. And for the reigning 6A champions, they don't get a bye. They've had to go through a ton of different things this year to get started, but and try to figure out who they are. And if you look at a tough loss to Corner Canyon, where that Corner Canyon got away from, but I think they were still reeling from that Skyridge loss where they had that game 30-10. And like, hey, here we go. And then you have the injury to the Hodgkins and probably I always
Hodson.
Thank you. The injury to Hodson. And then you got to figure out who Bateman, all kinds of stuff. They're trying to figure out who their quarterback is and reshuffle the deck. And while Hodson hopefully is healthy and able to go, if not this week, if they were to win against Copper Hills the following week.
Yeah, this is a very tough situation for the Knights. Not a familiar situation for Coach Brockbank and this group. I mean, look, this has been a group that's made it to semifinals. 4 straight years, Dusty? I don't
More
even
than
recall.
that, yeah.
It's been a
all the way back to
long run. Yeah, and so, man, it feels like everything that could go wrong this year has for the Knights, and yet, they don't have to go through a Region 4 team in this bracket. So we talk about how good Region 4 is. They have the opportunity to show, hey, even though we're an 11 seed, we didn't win that region championship. We were hoping to contend. We weren't in the top 2 in that region. They can still put together a run here and find themselves back at Rice Eccles, but their depth as a program is going to be tested in these playoffs, and they're going to have young men step up and really come to play and help take that team to that level. It's a deep program. Their numbers are unreal. They've got the ability to do it. We'll see if they can put together a big playoff run in what could be one of the lower seeds in 6A to ever make that type of a run.
And for Copper Hills, it just didn't the way the end of the season went. But want to make sure Copper Hills fans are going to be, hey, why don't you talk about us? But it's kind of where the situation is and where we see it go. Yeah. By the way, last time Lone Peak played on the opening weekend of the RPI was the first year of the RPI. I remember the whole saga of illegal or the player that was undeclared. And they went to Riverton, and I remember how that one went because I was there. Did that one. Easton Comer, or his older brother, had a pretty good night that night. So anyway, they play into Syracuse. That'll be a fun matchup. And then we go into the next one. PG and Cypress, 14-15. Not all 14-15 matchups kind of feel the same. And the way that PG played at the beginning of the year, then Staffieri got hurt, maybe Coach Walkers can resurrect some of that.
I think it's resurrected, Dusty. Look, I mean, they were battling with injuries, but look, they took on Corner Canyon week 10. They fell down 21-0. They came back and tied that game up. This was a team
turnovers.
But even that, they're going up against the number one team in the state or in 6A, and they have to battle back in that one, and they do. I think this is a very favorable matchup for Pleasant Grove. We talk about an offense that can score in bunches. If Staffieri's healthy, this is an offense that can go toe-to-toe with most offenses in 6A. It's that good. And it could be a scary group, again, depending on that health, when this whole thing shakes out.
No, you're absolutely right. I just wanted to point out, they had the crazy turnovers, but they took advantage of them. And it was 31-21 beginning of the fourth quarter, and then the Corner Canyon put the distance between them. But you're absolutely right. I just want to see it come back because you saw the previous weeks that Skyridge game was what it was, and I just want to see PG get that mojo going where they were just blowing some teams out there for a little bit. And they play into Bingham. How about Coach Jones, his first year, the head coach with Bingham? Remember after the Tiffany game, we're like, oh, man, where's Bingham? And then here comes Bingham. They knock off AF, and they have run on ever since. And this team has found their identity. They have learned the defensive philosophy they want to learn. They've learned the offense of Freddie Fernandez. And Dal Martinez, now this is a scary quarterback proposition, the way that he can run the football.
Yeah, multi-year starter, of course, new coaching staff. And I'm going to say this, and Bingham fans, I mean this in the best of way possible. Bingham's back. And they never really went anywhere, right? But the fact that they're a top 3 seed, it's like Bingham's back. Yep. Because it has kind of felt like for the last, 5 or 6 years, Dusty's been like, man, Bingham's still there, but they're not really there. That's how I've kind of seen it.
Yeah, since Monte Pepa, yeah.
And they are scoring points. Their defense is playing really well right now, flying around. Tip of the cap. Coach Jones has done a fantastic job. Of course, Freddie being there. What a job they have done in just their first year at Bingham to get this team back into a top 3 seeding in the 6A state tournament. Dusty, that's got to warm your heart, man. It's the teens, Dusty, just finding himself in 2022 and this Bingham group. It'll be interesting to see, right? They've got some interesting matchups in this bracket. And of course, if they can get back to Rice Eccles, it'll be the first time in a while. But man, it'll be interesting. I think this lineup actually matches up very well in the classification. Of course, the Corner Canyon game, Tim, you mentioned that earlier. But man, this group, when they're firing, it's a scary bunch.
No, it is. And I love the changes they've made too, right? It's still Bingham. They wear the white pants sometimes at home. They got the copper stripe that runs down the middle because remember the old copper mine field and all that kind of stuff. So I love what they've done this year, and that team just gets better and better. All right, then we go to the next spot, Riverton and Kearns. Normally it's what a matchup. It's been a different year for the Kearns Cougars. Hasn't been the same team. But for Riverton, man, Coach Jordy Morgan, this team, it plays into Davis. Either one, I think, is an interesting part of the bracket.
Yeah, it is. Look, Davis getting a first-round bye. We talked about that earlier. This Riverton bunch they're scary. Dusty, we talked about, first year, they defeated Bingham in back-to-back years, fell short this year in week 10, but it's still a really good bunch. They like to run the football, very good at it. And they don't overwhelm you, right? They play a lot of close ball games, but man, they find ways to win. And it's a bunch that when you look at that Kearns group, I mean, Dusty, it's been a while since Kearns has had this low of a seeding. Coach Rickards has done such a good job there, but man, graduated so much off of last year's roster and just has been tough to find guys to come in and replace that. But this is a Riverton team that they beat Syracuse in week 1, right? That was one that was like, oh, dang. And then, beat Springville. That's a top 3 seed in 5A. They went toe-to-toe with PG. This is a really tough Riverton group. And it'll be interesting to see if they can put that together for a run. It's a very favorable circumstance. I'm not picking them to beat Davis. We'll do our picks in a future week, but it's a winnable game. It's a competitive game. It's not like they're going up against, a Corner Canyon in a second round or a Skyridge in a second round. They've got a path to get to a couple of playoff wins done here in 2022, and it'll be interesting to see if the Silver Wolves can do it.
Yeah, but very interesting to see where they bounce back and what they can do. And they play in like we mentioned, into Davis and the great turnaround from this year. Then our final matchup in week 1 of the state tournament, Granger and Fremont. Granger is a team that we've been talking about, hey, here comes Granger, and waiting for that West game. They've had some injuries. They lose to Roy. They lose to West in big fashions. And they bring in Fremont, who's coming in off of winning the head-on-the-stick game against Weber, and maybe possibly figures himself out in this one. It's very interesting to see who bounces out of this one and who's taking some momentum into week 2.
Yeah, really, really tough game here. You look at a Granger team that, they found their offense about midway through, and we're dealing with some injuries. When everyone kind of came back, it was like, here come the Lancers, and they were putting up points in bunches, still trying to get 100% in terms of healthy. But man, a Fremont group, you talk about a big win over Weber, David Calvert and company. It is a tricky roster for Fremont. They've got one of the best linebackers as well in Christian Blanche. He's one of the top tacklers. And that young man, he's flying around right now as well, intercepting a lot of passes for the Silver Wolves. I think he had 2 in that head-on-stick game against Weber. This is an interesting matchup for a first-round game as 15-16 or 15-18, whatever it is, should be a fun one for Fremont and Granger.
That'd be interesting. They play in the Sky Ridge, and the Sky Ridge Falcons they figure themselves out. McKay Hillstead is still an unknown of what we'd see out of McKay Hillstead, and if we will see him in the state tournament. We saw Zach Wilson come back his senior year and play. Don't know if we'll see the same thing from McKay Hillstead. We never want to speculate on injuries, right?
Correct. Yeah, and heard a couple of rumors, but have yet to talk to McKay, and even if I had, wouldn't share it. Look, it'll be interesting. I really feel like this Sky Ridge offense, though, the more time Trent Call has had, the more they found themselves. It's hard to replace a McKay Hillstead. And I think Trent Call has done a really good job coming in and being able to pick up that load. They've changed things a little bit offensively to play to what his strengths are. But, man, you get that ground game going with Tate Walker. You get Trent Call slinging it. You get a guy like Kalama. You can bring him across on some fly sweeps. You can do various things to get him the football. And with that defense, Dusty, you don't have to score a lot. So this is a Sky Ridge group, really scary. And I think they're coming in with motivation. I think that regular season loss to Corner reminds them, guys, you might have been number 1, but nothing's guaranteed in this thing. I think they're going to be playing some of their best ball in the state tournament.
It's hard to think we're at the state tournament, but when we get into these games, it's one and done for these guys. It's what makes covering these state tournaments heartbreaking, but also an absolute blast.
Yeah, I can't wait, Dusty. We've got a great tournament set up for this year. Obviously some favorites, but there's always teams that just find ways to mess things up for the favorites, and we'll see who's able to get that done this year.
Absolutely. And also want to remind you that all your streaming championships are right here on KSLSports.com. Look, coaches, if we hold all the games at 6A, we do all kinds of fun stuff. Red Zone, myself and Jeff Hansen. Dane's going to have his games of the week. We're going to send out our crews for as many streams as we could possibly do to make sure we get the best coverage we absolutely can. But you can see all of it. If it's from Rewind or from some of the other vendors, right here on KSLSports.com, your home for online championships. For Vince Francis and Dane Stewart, I'm Dusty Lister. Thanks for joining us and for watching KSL Sports Rewind on KSLSports.com.